if we look at what Respect at Work, a couple of the key findings, they said, let's get it out of, there's multiple jurisdictions that something like sexual harassment can sit under, legal framework. So we've got industrial employee / HR law, and it can sit there. And things like adverse actions kind of fall into that space. It can go criminal. Okay, so there are certain behaviours and or verbal kind of things that occur that can constitute criminal offences, that you could potentially go criminal. And then you've got anti-discrimination as a lens that we can take it, and that's typically where it tends to sit in organisations, with an anti-discrimination kind of flavour. And then there's, lo and behold, the safety legislation, which is the least utilised and yet the most effective in its current form. So, again, if you're looking at a change in an employment contract, that's really sort of an industrial relations kind of lens. It's saying this is about your employment contract and that governs your behaviour. Whereas the safety perspective is, we know far more effective in its current form. It shifts it from I guess what we've got with discrimination can be loosely described as there's a reasonable steps obligation, which means the organisation needs to take reasonable steps to, stop sexual harassment and other forms of discriminatory behaviour from occurring. But the beauty of the safety lens is that it's a primary and positive duty of care that's on the employer. Okay, so the organisation has to do the hard yards first. Yes, individual workers have some responsibility for their own health and safety, but that's a secondary duty, right? So it's really about shifting this away from what should potential targets be doing and how can they avoid being sexually harassed and how do they better cope with poor behaviour if they experience it. It really shifts the thinking to, well, what is the organisation actually doing at its grassroots level of legal obligation to prevent these instances occurring in the first place. So, Respect at Work really highlighted some of those, the inadequacies of various legal frameworks we can sit this with, and literally said the safety framework in its current form is the most effective. So we should be using it more often. And yet you wander into the standard HR department and we still see sexual harassment and bullying and other forms of, those psych hazards sitting under HR and sitting under anti-discrimination or IR frameworks.